Listen, they tell you late-game injuries are a fatigue issue. That the muscle simply ran out of power. But the biology of an athlete knows better. We don't guess at prevention. We break down the 4-point injury science blueprint to show you the truth. Stick with us. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to turn those weak points into unbreakable armor. Injuries are not just bad luck, they are often a predictable failure point in our body system. Today, we're taking a journey from your skull to your soul, showing you the most common sports injuries. This video is your practical guide to the most common, game-stopping sports injuries that you have constantly experienced or witnessed. Here, we will take you through 4 key injury areas. Starting from who gets them, what type they are, where they happen, and how they occur, giving you the knowledge to minimize your risk. This is not to scare you, it's to equip you with the knowledge to protect your game. Starting at the top, the head, neck and trunk. The what? 1. Concussions. This is a traumatic brain injury that temporarily affects normal brain function. It is a sudden failure of the fibrous joints and fluid system of the skull to absorb impact when the head is hit. How it occurs. It is caused by a direct blow to the head, a hit on the head or an indirect force on the head, which causes rapid movement or whiplash that rapidly shakes the brain inside the skull. Where? It's mostly common in contact sports like football, boxing, hockey and accidental falls like skateboarding. Think of a head punch by a football goalkeeper or head collision by opposing players in a rugby game. Who is at risk? Any athlete, especially those in positions with high collision risk. 2. Neck sprains. What is it? This is the sudden overstretching of the neck's ligaments and muscles. How it occurs. Often results from a tackle or fall. An example is when heading a football or being tackled recklessly by an opponent in rugby. 3. Stress fracture. What it is. This is a small hair-like crack in the bone, spine or skeleton due to repetitive stress. It does not happen at once like in other injuries, instead, the crack develops slowly when that specific part is subjected to repeated stress or impact during the game. Who? Gymnasts and fast bowlers who repeatedly hyperextend their spines. How? It is due to chronic, cumulative load exceeding the bone's repair rate. Next region is the shoulder and elbow. 1. Shoulder dislocation or subluxation. What it is. This is when the ball and socket joint of the shoulder is pulled or pushed out of its socket due to the failure of the surrounding ligaments and joint capsule to maintain stability. Where? Common in pitchers, swimmers, volleyball players, martial arts, rugby, downhill mountain biking and any other player with repetitive overhead motion or contact. How? Can be caused by a hard fall onto an outstretched arm, or a forceful external pull on the shoulder joint. 2. Elbow tendinitis, also called tennis or golfer's elbow. What it is. It is the inflammation or tiny tearing of the tendons in the elbow. Where? Throwing sports, like tennis or baseball. How it occurs. Due to repetitive gripping, swinging, or throwing motion that overloads the tendons that connect the forearm muscles to the bone. Look at this baseball player throwing the ball. That swing of the arm can lead to formation of a tear on the tendons in the elbow. 3. Finger and wrist dislocation. What it is. This is when bones in the finger or wrist joints are pushed out of their normal alignment. Who? Basketball players, volleyball when jamming or spiking and in gymnastics. How? It is a result of direct impact, such as a ball hitting the fingertip during a game, like in volleyball or landing on an awkwardly bent wrist from a tackle. 3. Bone fractures. What it is. A crack or break in the skeleton like the clavicle or the forearm. Who? Cyclists, skiers and any sport with high-speed crashes or accidents. How it occurs. Falling directly onto the shoulder or hand with immense force that exceeds the bone's tensile strength. We move on to the trunk and spine. 1. Lumbar strain. What it is the overstretching or tearing of the large lower back muscles. Where? Gymnastics, golf and weightlifting. How it occurs. Improper technique during weightlifting or explosive rotational movements in gymnastic. 2. Disc herniation. What it is. The soft cartilaginous joint between your vertebrae breaks or bulges slightly outwards. Where it occurs. Sports with high compression or rotational movement, like wrestling or rowing. How? Repeated heavy lifting or twisting under load. Next, the knee. 1. Knee dislocation. What it is. This is when the shin bone and thigh bone are completely separated, due to total failure of multiple major ligaments. Where? High-velocity impacts like in motorsports, football tackles or extreme skiing. How it occurs. Due to massive impact that forces the knee hyperextended or severely twisted. An example is a direct kick on the knee in football. 2. ACL and meniscus tear. What it is. Tearing of the stabilizing ligament, ACL, or the cushioning cartilage, meniscus. Who? Soccer, basketball, and netball players who pivot frequently. How it occurs. This is a non-contact injury caused by sudden slowing down in motion when playing, combined with a change in direction while the foot is planted on the ground. This is one of the most dangerous injuries in sports with the longest healing duration. ACL tears are often described as career-ending injuries because of the consequences they leave on a player. Don't forget to check the bio for the next video so that you can understand more on the healing duration of ACL and meniscus tear and their likely long-term effects on a player. Now let's talk about the engines of speed. The muscles of your thigh. This area is a high-risk zone because it handles explosive acceleration and deceleration. 1. Hamstring strain or tear. What? Is a sudden tear or overstretching of the three large muscles on the back of your thigh. This is a failure of the muscle fibers to handle the rapid force. Where, sprinters, soccer players, rugby players, anyone who hits top speed suddenly. How? It almost always occurs during the terminal swing phase of sprinting, that is, when the hamstring is trying to slow down the leg or during a sudden, forceful push-off. This is the injury that stops a sprinter or a footballer dead in their tracks. It is another common injury in sports because of the player's top speed in most games. How many times have you seen a player pull their hamstrings like this? 2. Quadriceps contusion or deep bruise. What? Is a severe, deep impact injury to the large muscles, the quadriceps on the front of your thigh. The impact causes internal bleeding and swelling. Where? Contact sports like American football, hockey, or rugby. How? A direct, blunt force trauma, such as a knee or helmet hitting the thigh, crushing the muscle against the bone, the femur. 3. Adductor strain or groin. What? Is a tear to the inner thigh muscles, called adductor muscles. Where? Soccer, hockey, tennis, sports that require explosive side-to-side cuts and rotational movements. How? Forceful movement that pulls the legs quickly apart, overloading the muscles that pull them back together. You must have seen this frequently in the game you watch. These thigh injuries are notoriously recurrent. But why? One reason is because athletes tend to rush the healing of the muscle fibers and fail to restore full strength and flexibility before returning to play. We will break down more on the rehabilitation process of thigh injuries in our next video. 3. Ankle/foot fractures. What is it? It involves breaking the bones of the foot or ankle. Where? In athletes where the feet can get trapped like in wrestling or who land from extreme heights like in long jump. How it occurs. From high force twisting, or compressive force from a hard landing. Next, ankle sprain. What it is. It is the overstretching or tearing of the ligaments on the outside of the ankle. This is one of the single most common sports injury. Where? Nearly all sports, particularly basketball, trail running, and volleyball. How it occurs. Through landing awkwardly or stepping on another player's foot, causing the foot to roll inward. 4. Turf toe. What it is. A sprain or tear of the ligaments and capsule around the big toe joint. Who? Athletes who play on artificial turf, especially football players. How it occurs. The toe is repeatedly forced into hyperextension or bent upward when pushing off for a sprint. We move on to the Achilles tendinitis or rupture. What it is. It is the inflammation or a complete tear or rupture of the largest tendon in the body, the Achilles tendon, connecting the calf muscle to the heel bone. Where? Sprinters, jumpers, and tennis players. How it occurs. Through sudden, forceful push-off movement like jumping or sprinting start. In sports you will always see a player holding the lower part of their foot after taking off rapidly from the ground in a sprint. Did you know that not all injuries are visible? Let us see them. 1. Side stitches or exercise-related transient abdominal pain, ETAP. What? This is a sharp pain, usually under the lower ribs, related to muscle spasm or irritation of the abdominal lining. Who? Runners, swimmers, and endurance athletes. How it occurs. It's commonly triggered by eating too close to exercise or inadequate breathing patterns during the game. 2. Dehydration complications. What they are. While not a mechanical injury, severe dehydration affects the entire body, impacting blood volume and temperature control, leading to cramps and systemic failure. Who? Endurance sports in the heat like marathons and triathlons. How it occurs. Failure to replace fluids and electrolytes lost through sweating. And finally we are done. Every injury we discussed is a breakdown of the complex biological body framework we've studied, from the rigid protection of your skull to the crucial cushioning in your spine and the complex mechanics of your limbs. Injuries cannot be avoided, but they require attention. But, who prevents them? You do. How? This is the most critical part. Understanding the how of an injury is the first step in avoiding it. What should you do now? Prioritize rehabilitation and prehabilitation as in our next video. Where should you start? With your ankle and knee. But how do you ensure you see our next video on rehabilitation versus prehabilitation? Easy, smash that like button and subscribe to Biology of an Athlete.